Welcome to our Reddit, where we tell a story on a crazy Karen. Title: My Neighbor from Hell. When I moved into my new home, I was looking forward to the peace and quiet of suburban life. I had just landed my dream job, bought a house that was a perfect blend of charming and modern, and felt like I was on top of the world. Little did I know, I was about to embark on a journey that would test my patience, sanity, and sense of humor. For I was about to meet Karen, my neighbor from hell. Chapter 1: The First Encounter. My first encounter with Karen was surprisingly unremarkable. I was unloading boxes from my car when she approached me with a bright, almost blinding smile plastered on her face. She was in her late 40s, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, and wore a pastel cardigan that screamed suburban mom. "Hi there, I'm Karen, your neighbor from across the street," she said, extending her hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood." I smiled back, relieved that she seemed friendly. "Thanks, I'm Alex. Nice to meet you." "Oh, it's such a lovely area. You're going to love it here," she chirped, her eyes scanning my boxes. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." "Will do," I replied, thinking that maybe suburban life was going to be even better than I had imagined. Little did I know, Karen's friendliness was just a mask for the nightmare that was about to unfold. Chapter 2: The Parking Wars. It started with the parking. My driveway was a bit narrow, and on busy days, I would park on the street. One morning, I woke up to find a note on my windshield. "Please do not park in front of my house. This is a private area. Karen." I was a bit taken aback. My car wasn't blocking her driveway, nor was it on her property. I decided to let it go and parked a bit further down the street the next day. But it didn't stop there. The notes kept coming, each one more passive-aggressive than the last. One evening, I decided to confront her. I walked over to her house and knocked on the door. She answered almost immediately, as if she had been expecting me. "Hi, Karen. Can we talk about the parking situation?" I asked, trying to keep my tone polite. "Oh, it's just that the street looks so cluttered when cars are parked all over the place," she said with a sweet but insincere smile. "I'm sure you understand." "But it's a public street," I replied, my patience wearing thin. "I'm not breaking any rules." Karen's smile faltered for a moment, revealing a glimpse of the steel beneath. "Well, I just think it's best for the neighborhood if we keep things tidy." From that day on, I made it a point to park in front of her house whenever possible. It was petty, but it gave me a small sense of victory in the ongoing parking wars. Chapter 3: The HOA Meeting. I soon discovered that Karen was the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association HOA. She wielded her power like a tyrant, enforcing obscure rules and regulations that seemed to exist solely to make everyone's lives more difficult. The first HOA meeting I attended was an eye-opener. Karen stood at the front of the room, clipboard in hand, addressing the attendees with the authority of a drill sergeant. "We need to discuss the color of Alex's front door," she announced, her eyes narrowing as they locked onto me. "It doesn't conform to the neighborhood's aesthetic." I was stunned. My front door was a deep blue, a color that I had chosen because it made me happy. "What's wrong with my door?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's not on the approved color list," Karen replied, flipping through her clipboard. "You'll need to repaint it within the next 2 weeks." I looked around the room, hoping for support, but most of the neighbors avoided my gaze. It was clear that Karen had them cowed. "I'm not repainting my door," I said firmly. "There's nothing wrong with it." Karen's eyes flashed with anger. "If you don't comply, you'll be fined." I left the meeting fuming, but determined not to let Karen bully me. Over the next few weeks, I received multiple notices from the HOA, each one more threatening than the last. I ignored them all. Chapter 4: The Noise Complaints. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to have a few friends over for a barbecue. The weather was perfect, and I was looking forward to a relaxing day. As soon as the grill was fired up, Karen appeared at the edge of my yard, her face twisted in disapproval. "Are you having a party?" she demanded. "Just a small get-together," I replied, trying to keep things cordial. "Well, keep it down. Some of us value peace and quiet," she snapped before storming off. The afternoon went smoothly, but around 8 p.m., a police car pulled up to my house. The officer informed me that there had been a noise complaint. "Seriously, it's barely 8 o'clock, I protested. "Just keep it down," the officer said, looking bored, "or we'll have to come back." I knew exactly who had called the police. The next day, I confronted Karen. "Why did you call the cops on us?" I asked, struggling to keep my temper in check. "Some of us have to get up early," she replied, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. "If you can't be considerate, then maybe you should find somewhere else to live." I walked away, seething. It was clear that Karen wasn't going to stop until she made my life miserable. Chapter 5: The Revenge. I decided it was time to fight back. I started small, playing my music a bit louder, leaving my garbage cans out a little longer, and parking in front of her house whenever possible. But Karen was relentless. She escalated her efforts, reporting me to the HOA for every minor infraction, and even spreading rumors about me to the other neighbors. One night, I had an idea. I ordered a dozen garden gnomes online and, under the cover of darkness, placed them all over Karen's yard. The next morning, I watched from my window as she came out to get the newspaper and saw the gnomes. Her scream of frustration was music to my ears. But Karen wasn't one to take things lying down. She retaliated by calling the city to complain about my lawn, which she claimed was overgrown. It wasn't. I received a notice giving me 48 hours to mow it or face a fine. It was an exhausting, petty war of attrition, and I was starting to feel the strain. But I was determined not to let Karen win. Chapter 6: The Breakthrough. One afternoon, I was sitting on my porch, trying to unwind after a particularly stressful day at work, when I noticed a moving truck across the street. A young couple was moving into the house next to Karen's. I decided to go over and introduce myself, partly to warn them about Karen, and partly out of curiosity. "Hi, I'm Alex. Welcome to the neighborhood," I said, extending my hand to the man who was unloading a box. "Thanks, I'm Mark, and this is my wife, Sarah," he replied, shaking my hand. "Nice to meet you." We chatted for a bit, and I found out that they were newlyweds, excited to start their life together in their new home. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should mention Karen, but decided against it. They'd find out soon enough. Over the next few weeks, I watched as Karen made her move on the new neighbors. She brought over cookies, offered unsolicited advice about their landscaping, and tried to rope them into the HOA. But Mark and Sarah were different. They were friendly, but firm, and didn't seem intimidated by Karen's overbearing nature. One evening, I saw Mark and Sarah in their yard and decided to join them for a chat. As we talked, Karen came over, clearly annoyed that I was getting along with her new targets. "Alex, we need to talk about your lawn ornaments," she said, glaring at me. "What about them?" I asked, feigning innocence. "They're tacky and bring down the neighborhood's appearance," she snapped. Mark and Sarah exchanged amused glances. "We actually think they're kind of fun," Mark said, grinning. "Add some character to the place." Karen's face turned red with anger. "This is a respectable neighborhood, not a circus." "Relax, Karen," Sarah said with a smile. "It's just a bit of harmless fun." I could see Karen struggling to keep her composure. She turned on her heel and marched back to her house without another word. Chapter 7: The Showdown. It was clear that Karen's power was starting to wane. With Mark and Sarah on my side, other neighbors began to speak up as well. The next HOA meeting was a turning point. Karen tried to bring up more complaints about my property, but this time she was met with resistance. "Karen, Alex's door color isn't hurting anyone," said Mrs. Thompson, a sweet elderly lady who lived down the street. "And the gnomes are kind of cute," added Mr. Garcia, a retired teacher. Karen was visibly flustered. "This is about maintaining standards," she insisted. "It's about being a good neighbor," Mark interjected, "and Alex has been nothing but that." The meeting ended with Karen storming out, her control over the HOA effectively broken. Chapter 8: The Aftermath. With Karen's influence diminished, the neighborhood started to change. People were more relaxed, and the atmosphere became friendlier. Mark and Sarah hosted a block party, and it was a huge success. Even the neighbors who had previously been under Karen's thumb came out and enjoyed themselves. Karen, however, was not one to admit defeat easily. She continued to make snide comments and file petty complaints, but without the HOA backing her up, her efforts were largely ignored. One day, I noticed a "for sale" sign on Karen's lawn. I couldn't believe it. Was she really moving? A few weeks later, I saw a moving truck in front of her house, and Karen loading boxes into it. As she was packing up the last of her things, I walked over to say goodbye. Despite everything, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. "Moving out?" I asked. Karen looked at me, her expression unreadable. Yes, it's time for a change. I nodded. Good luck, Karen. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded back. You too, Alex. As I watched the moving truck drive away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The nightmare was finally over. Epilogue, a new beginning. With Karen gone, the neighborhood flourished. People were friendlier, more relaxed, and the sense of community grew stronger. I even repainted my front door a brighter shade of blue, just because I could. Mark, Sarah, and I became close friends, and we often laughed about our encounters with Karen. It was a reminder that sometimes the best way to deal with a difficult situation is to find humor in it. Life in the suburbs wasn't always perfect, but it was my home, and I was finally at peace. And every time I saw a garden gnome, I couldn't help but smile, remembering the crazy neighbor who had, in her own way, brought us all together. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this and want to support me.